Hello everyone, welcome to Kersey Senegal. Today's video comes in two parts. I want to take you on a tour uh, through one of my favorite spots in Central Park. But before I do that, I want to share with you some of what I've been thinking about in terms of, moving, relocating to West Africa. As I contemplate this move and take in the mountains of information that I've been getting from various sources, including articles in the news about what's going on in Africa, the many YouTube channels that have been created by people who are talking about uh, either moving to Africa or who are already there, or who are just talking about issues around that the African diaspora is dealing with, to TV news stations like Bloomberg News television, which covers the happenings of things all around the world, and the many people that I've been talking to about this move. So one of the things that's come to mind is that I don't think that capitalism, this is a big issue, right? I don't think that capitalism is, or that Africa, at least the countries that I've been focusing on being Ghana, Senegal, and the Gambia, that they're well suited for pure capitalism. Right? I don't think it really works. It doesn't really work for African Americans. And it doesn't really work pure capitalism for any country, including the U.S., in spite of the fact that many in the U.S. pride themselves on the notion that it's a purely capitalistic society. It is not. There is a relatively small segment of the population that believes in pure capitalism and this kind of dog-eat-dog society, it's a survival of the fittest and all that. But capitalism, when you look at it closely, really, it favors people who are already rich. As my father once said, rich people really are just, in large part, those who stole assets, gained power through those assets, and then created laws that made stealing illegal. So I steal your property, I steal your land, and now I'm in charge, and if you want land, you have to buy it from me. You can't steal it. So that's maybe the biggest source of wealth creation in this country and around the world. So, and the other thing is that here in the U.S., there are, people from every rung of the social economic ladder get some support from the government in different scenarios, different situations, right? So we have safety nets for the poor, but we have safety nets for everyone when it's needed. For example, right now, as we're going through this economic crisis as a result of the pandemic, you have the Treasury Department working in concert with the Federal Reserve Bank to provide funds to otherwise very wealthy companies at low interest rates to make sure that they are able to continue to operate. So handouts have been made available to entire industries, the auto industry, and to entire companies over time. Everybody has their hand in the pot at some point or another. So it's really a false narrative to argue that the United States is a purely capitalistic society. And we've come to realize that, that doesn't really work. So I think that when you hear like the Chinese say, well, they're going into Africa because they're going to make money, and that's just the way the world operates. The fact of the matter is, it doesn't work that way. And certainly claiming or wanting to sort of adopt this purely capitalistic system really only invites people like the Chinese into Africa to kind of take over and exploit the assets that Africa has at the detriment to the Africans. So, and I'm not saying that we shouldn't deal with the Chinese, right? They're there in Africa and they're likely there to stay. But I think we have to be better prepared to negotiate with the Chinese in a way that Africans benefit. One of the things that I've been hearing so much about over the past few weeks is how African governments have essentially negotiated away Africa's most precious resources and assets to the Chinese. That is something that has to stop. So how do we do that, right? How do we negotiate in a way so that it's a fair deal in the end? Well, I think one of the things that we have to think very hard about going forward is when we educate ourselves and when we send our kids to school, that we do send them to school to study business, to learn the technology of finance, accounting, marketing, human resources, general business management, so that we don't find ourselves in the situations that we have been in the past, where we end up giving away the things that have the greatest value to those who don't really appreciate it, and then we're left out in the cold. So one of the things, one of the many things that have come up is that the countries in West Africa, back to Africa, the countries in West Africa have grown recently, and much of that growth is being financed through loans by the likes of the World Bank. So you have, loans being made to the government doing the spending primarily, and so in a more, balanced economic system, you would have, for example, in the U.S., even though the government does play a big role in supporting society, much of the economic growth comes from consumers and it comes from private businesses. So we do need to rebalance the economies in Africa so that, you have enough companies there who are generating enough income. And it's kind of a cycle, right? You have to have people working so that they earn an income, and then they can buy products, which spurs more demand, and that causes more companies to create products that people can buy, and then people are able to work for those companies, right, to build those products so that others can buy them. And as they work to build those products, they can use that income to buy products. So it's like it just goes in a circle, and then you have this self-perpetuating economic engine, which has actually largely, taken root in the U.S. and in other countries. And so we need to generate that kind of engine in countries in Africa. And so you got to get to that point where, that companies are able to hire people, that they're able to pay them enough money so that they can spend money in the economy. Because otherwise, right, how does African governments generate enough tax revenue to repay the loans that they've taken out from the World Bank? So how do we get to that point where the economic engine is self-perpetuating? So one of the things that many African governments are suggesting happen is that the skills and resources and wealth of the African diaspora be repatriated into African countries, because there you will have people who already have a level of income and a level of wealth that can be used to further support the economy that is being right now propped up by the government. So one of the things I want to say is that as Africans in the diaspora move back to the continent, that we come with a mindset that's not purely capitalistic, that we have what many call a double bottom line perspective in our businesses, which is one in which we balance the need for profit generation with the well-being of greater society, right? Not that you want to run a business at a loss, because a business that runs at a loss doesn't last very long, but that you don't necessarily focus on maximizing profits, but that you run your business in a way that you think about sustainability, you think about community, you act in ways that uh, generate um, wealth, not just for yourself, but for your employees, and that supports economic growth and a good, sustainable, healthy society overall. So I just want to add that I don't overgeneralize about the Chinese, right? So, and this is, I haven't been living in Senegal and Africa, so I don't have firsthand knowledge of what is actually happening. This statement about the Chinese coming into Africa and exploiting the resources and not acting fairly is based on what I've been hearing from others. It's not based on firsthand knowledge. And I've gone, like, there's the Chinese Institute here in New York, which is an organization that they have a facility and they hold lectures, workshops to learn Chinese and also to learn about what the Chinese are doing. And I attended one such lecture about the Chinese expansion into Africa, and there were many Africans who attended this particular lecture who said that they were happy that the Chinese were in Africa. So I don't think that there's a one uniform voice or opinion about the value that the Chinese, or the damage that the Chinese have been doing. And so I just want to acknowledge that obviously what seems to be evident is that there is an upside and a downside. There's the story that went viral on the internet where some of the Chinese were being deported because they were being so disrespectful and abusive of Africans. So you hear stories that are negative, and of course negative news travels at lightning speed, but you also hear stories that of the Chinese providing financing and starting businesses and hiring people. So you hear both sides of the coin, and I just wanted to acknowledge that. Last thing I want to say is that because this video went on a lot longer than I had anticipated, I am going to save the tour of Central Park for a separate video. So I'm going to post that right after, or tomorrow after I post this one. Signing off for now.